Hello everyone, we are taking a look at the most broken spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5e by Taking 20 today. As many people know, we here in Zarku Games don't always agree with Taking 20. They they have a bit of a interesting take on a lot of things 5e, and according to this video, they are taking a look at the single best spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I have not watched this. You might call these broken, overpowered, or flat out busted, and you'd be right. Spells are the best in the entire game, and I'm going to talk about why. Show more, let's see. I'm just talking about his class and all that stuff. So, let's see what they're going to talk about. I haven't seen this yet. Are we going to talk about the spells that are broken and don't function, like Thunderwave, that you can't even understand how it's supposed to function by reading the text? Or we're going to talk about things like Fireball that the developers have specifically stated is overtuned because people like it. Or we're going to talk about creative spells. Spells that are only as strong as a player's imagination. I'm really honestly curious on how he's going to take this. So let's dive in and see how Taking 20 has this really interesting, the most broken spells. He doesn't give a list. It's not like the 5 most broken spells or anything. But let's see what he goes.
Few things are better in a game of Dungeons and Dragons than casting a big, powerful, game-changing spell. I mean, seriously, what's more satisfying than beating a big, scary monster or slaying a dragon in D&D 5e with a smart, powerful spell, looking down at your sheet and seeing that perfect answer to get you and your party out of a tight spot, and that moment of anticipation after you announce what spell you're casting, waiting with bated breath to see if the dungeon master says the save has been failed or not. It's exciting, and spellcasting has never been a more integral part of the game of Dungeons and Dragons.
So, oh wow, that's a great pause. Okay, so he's talking about what we affectionately call save or die, or save or suck spells, which means if you make a single save, then the opponent either dies, or they're useless. The most common examples are things like Finger of Death, Hold Person, Hold Monster. Cloud Kill is another example of these. These are kind of very old school spells. And they're meant to be go big or go home style spells. And, they have a place in the game. I think they're very useful. They're high impact, high risk, high reward style spells. And there's nothing wrong with them. They usually take an entire action to cast. And they're risky plays. If you have an encounter where you're throwing that at a big monster and he's going to die from it, and that's going to end your campaign, if you haven't had to set up for it and it works, then your DM's bad. 5e has in place legendary actions that most of the time they just get to auto-save versus spells, specifically for this reason, because they left these in.
As it has been with 5th edition. But not all spells are created equal. No matter how much the game designers try to balance out everything with different options by giving them different spell levels and playtesting.
Sorry, did I laugh out loud about that?
Some spells are just better. Some might even be considered overpowered spells or broken spells, busted spells, etc.
So yes, there are better spells and there are worse spells in 5e. They did not balance this edition well at all when it comes to spells. The fact that they even tried is good, but the idea that even not alone high level spells, but starting in cantrips, like there are huge variants in a good cantrip versus a bad cantrip. So the idea that this game is balanced is like the biggest joke in the world. 5e is not a balanced game, and I don't think they intended it to be a balanced game. If you want to look at a more balanced edition of Dungeons & Dragons, I will always tell people to go flip through the 4E book. That was incredibly balanced compared to 5E.
That's what I wanted to take a look at today. Just a few spells in Dungeons and Dragons 5e that are the most broken. The spells that when you compare them to the others in the game, they just seem almost too good. And for all you players out there, get ready to take notes. And for all you dungeon masters out there, sorry, not sorry. Oh, and as a final note, these aren't in any particular order. These are just very good busted spells. They're not exactly ranked from 5 down to the best one. So there's that.
Busted,
First up,
okay.
we have one of my favorite spells in D&D 5e, but one that I've only had a chance to see implemented a handful of times due to its high level, and that's the 7th level spell, Reverse Gravity from the Player's Handbook. This spell is so ridiculously broken, and to be
Let's take a look at what the spell does before we actually assume it's broken. It's a 7th level spell, which means you get into play 14th level-ish, depending on your class. This spell reverses gravity in a 50-foot radius, 100-foot high cylinder centered on a point within range. All creatures and objects that aren't somehow anchored to the ground in the area fall upwards and reach the top of the area we cast the spell. Okay. A creature can make a dex saving throw to grab onto a fixed object it can reach to avoid this fall. Alright, so that means they're going to take... if they're in a room, they could fall up to 100 feet high, which means they could take 10d6, 9d6 damage, depending on the room. But most rooms are 100 feet high. You know, the chances of, look, you're in this big area, big room. Cool, let's just launch it. If some solid objects such as ceilings encounter the fall, falling objects and creatures strike as if they would during a normal downward fall. If an object creature reaches the top of an area without striking anything, it remains there, oscillating slightly for the duration. At the end of the duration, affected objects and creatures fall back down. So they take falling damage going up, and they take falling damage going down. Okay. It lasts for 1 minute. Alright, cool. So, you fall 100 feet going up. Well, let's do a little Google search here for some realism effect. How long does it take to fall 100 feet? I felt long wrong. Mute. Speed, distance, and time. I am not a great math. Time elapsed 6 seconds. You fall 500 feet. So you can fall 100 feet in 3 seconds. So, it takes an action. I would say they don't immediately hit the top because they're starting from nothing. You know, you'd have to get a little into like you start at time elapse 0 and you start hitting that point like right about here. So maybe like at the 3-second mark, you fall in about that 100 feet. I mean, if you consider it takes a full action to cast, if they've done nothing else in their turn, maybe I would at least let them take a reaction. Maybe even an action to try to counter it. Like halfway up the fall, right? Because this is combat, you know, things happen simultaneously. So, like, to avoid the fall damage. Now, it does say that in the spell, it says straight up that they get to take a dexterity saving throw to grab an object, right? To reach. It doesn't say you don't get to do anything else. It doesn't say they immediately hit the top. It doesn't say anything like that. You know, talking about Thunder Wave a minute ago, this is another example of just a not great worded spell. Like, what happens, you know? And, for instance, if the room is higher than 100 feet, right, then they're not going to hit anything. They're just going to float at the top for a minute, and then suddenly or you're outside, suddenly they have a minute of floating up there that they get to cast spells at. And you can't, like, reach them in melee. You can't swim through the reverse gravity, right? You can't angle gravity here. It simply reverses it. I mean, this is a good spell. It would definitely be fun. But I wouldn't say it's broken. Not compared to other 7th level spells. I mean, let's do a little look up here, right? D and D 5e 7th level spells. Spells, I'm going to use Wikidot because I do. If we look at 7th level spells. Oh, we're not going to use Wikidot because it doesn't want to load. 7th level spells. Spells by level, right here. Finger of Death, we were just talking about that. Plane Shift, Prismatic Spray, Teleport, Resurrection, Force Cage, Conjure Celestial. You're dealing with some really powerful spells at this level anyway. I don't think it's any stronger than any of these other spells that you're dealing with. All right, let's go see what he's talking about.
To be honest, kind of hilarious when used. And when I say broken, I mean broken. You get to just upheave gravity in a 50-foot radius. That's 100-foot diameter, or 100 feet across for those of you playing at home. And there is, get this, absolutely zero your opponents can do about it. There isn't a save. Well, I mean, technically there's a save, but let me explain. The deck save, to not be yeeted 100 feet straight up into the air, is if and only if a creature in the area of effect has something anchored to the ground to attempt to even grab onto. If they don't, yeah, they get yeeted. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, and they slam into however high the ceiling is, taking fall damage in reverse. When the spell ends, they fall back to the earth, taking that fall damage again. But we're not done. It gets even more broken. Rules as written. Why did I say written instead of just like written? Anyways, here's the deal. If you cast this in, say, a field, a mountain pass, at the beach maybe, basically outdoors, the spell has an additional line that a lot of people overlook. Quote, if an object or creature reaches the top of the area without striking anything, it remains there, oscillating slightly for the duration, end quote. What does that mean? It means you can kill the Tarrasque with it, rules as written, albeit slowly. It means that whatever gets hung up at the top is just stuck there. No save, can't fall back down until the spell ends or concentration is broken. And you and your party can just shoot whatever you catch in your gravity trap until it dies. But wait, it gets even worse.
All right.
Now, I'll say
that is not at all what it means. It means it's stuck at the top of gravity. It still gets actions. It still can do things. Can it fly? Can it make ranged attacks? Yeah. Yeah, for 1 minute, it's kind of sitting there on a pedestal. But is it giant? Yeah, it can still do stuff. It just can't, climb down unless, I don't know, it can reach 100 feet and pull itself down. It's within its reach. Something giant could grab onto the ground with strong claws, like the Tarrasque, if you're going to use that as an example. Because we're going to go back to handy-dandy Google for you for a minute. Let's look at the Tarrasque. Because you brought it up. You brought up the Tarrasque. Alright, it can succeed its saving throw. So this is automatic if it wants to. Alright? It is gargantuan. It has 30 strength. right? How big is gargantuan? They take up 20 feet. So they're 32 by 60 feet to 64 feet tall and weigh 16 to 25 tons. So if we look at the size, they're this big. Not quite colossal, but gargantuan. Gargantuan reach. Oh, can't spell today. Gargantuan reach. D&D 5e gargantuan monsters. Oh, its claw has a 15-foot reach, which means it can reach 15 feet. With 30 strength. Do you think it couldn't just plunge its claw into the ground to hold on to the ground? Like, do you think that's not possible with 30 strength? Like, I think it is. Like, since you brought up the Tarrasque, I think that's perfectly valuable for the Tarrasque to do.
Okay, what I'm about to say is rules as written that I, should my players actually pull this, would 100% rule differently than strictly rules as written. But as we look at that line again, you'll notice something. It doesn't mention anything about flying. That's right. It doesn't say, well, if a creature flying through magical means, like on a broom of flying or something, or if it has wings, or if it flies, or anything like that, that it can, then it'll make a whatever check to try to orient itself in the new gravitational pull and try to fly upside down or in reverse or whatever. The spell is simply an if-then statement. If a creature is in the area, check. If it can't grab something, quote, anchored to the ground, end quote, and if it, quote, reaches the top of the area without striking anything, end quote, then it, quote, remains there oscillating slightly for the duration. So yes, rules as written. If you see a big, bad, scary, ancient CR-23 dragon flying right at you in your party, you can totally yeet that bad boy and laugh as you just firebolt it to death.
So, he gets on rules as written like this a lot. This idea that if it's not explicitly stated, you can't do it. That's not rules as written. Rules as written doesn't state that if it's not written there, you can't do it. Because... So, I'll explain this in a way. In certain instances, a spell will say you can do something in one instance, but not in another. A perfect example of that is certain fire spells state they light something on fire. Other fire spells say they specifically don't say they light things on fire. That means that the fire of one spell is intended to be constant, and the fire of another spell is intended to not be constant. You know, fireball is a flash in the pan. It's an explosion, versus like a burning hands, which is a flame jet. That's intentional. With this type of spell, it's clear that they intend you to use your brain when it comes to, oh yeah, you're just reversing gravity in the room. And here's what would happen in the situations where you don't normally encounter reverse gravity. Like, hey, we all know what gravity does. Like, and the things that would work under normal gravity still work. It's just pointed up. Oh, well, what would happen if we get to the top? Oh, well, certain rules people would go, oh, maybe you get shot out of the top like a cannon. Well, no, you don't get shot out of the top like a cannon. You just kind of sit there floating. So you can't take this spell and turn it into like let's stack these on top of each other and make a shooting star rocket thing. Which you actually probably could, but you can't, because when you get to the end of the first zone, you just kind of float there, right? Because you stop. Even if there's another zone, you stop at the end of the first one, right? So that if it didn't say that, somebody somewhere would be like, look, we're going to stack 4 of these and launch that dragon into space. That's why they put that rule in there, is to stop the peasant railgun. Because people in 3.5 and 3.0 and Pathfinder made the peasant railgun. They did stuff like that. But all of the things that still function under normal gameplay still function. You don't throw logic out the window when you have rules as written. That's not how rules as written work. You know, unless it's supposed to indicate how it works in a unique way.
Reverse gravity is totally broken. Yeah, now I just want to see somebody use this on like a huge group of guards and just yeet like 50 dudes instantly into the air and then just drop them back down for 10d6 each and be like, yeah, I'm the king now. You all work for me. Next up, we have a spell that is outright busted with Tasha's Mind Whip from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Tasha's Mind Whip is so deviously good.
All right, let's take a look at Tasha's Mind Whip before he starts talking. He says it's deviously good. 2nd level spell, which, to be fair, is actually a very, empty level, so not much competition there. Action, 60-foot range, verbal component, all great things. Duration 1 round. Int save, which is really good. Psychic damage, okay, you've already got me there. Psychically lash out a creature you can see within range. So you have to see it, and it's a verbal component. Great. Make an int saving throw. Awesome. On a failed save, 3d6 psychic damage, and it can't take reaction until the end of the next turn. Moreover. Alright, why did you have to have moreover? On its next turn, it must choose whether it gets a move, an action, or a bonus action. It only gets one of the 3. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and suffers none of the spell's effects. Cast a spell using 3rd level or higher. You can target 1 additional creature. Must be... Okay, I'm going to be with you here. This is pushing a little too strong. Like it already would have been good without the moreover part. You got me here as a spell, and at the high, or with even if you just did the more damage, or if it upped the damage, it would have been adding more. Like the damage, you don't need the damage. This is crowd control. That's what that is. It's about save or lose actions. That's what this is all about. This is a really good spell. This is pushing that level of maybe too strong. I don't think it's busted too strong, because again, int save, while good, it's probably the best, but keep in mind that a monster that succeeds, if it has a high int, can still take an action, and that's multi-attack. If you got to choose, then that would be truly broken, but it gets to choose, which means, anyone who has ever played a card game will tell you that making your opponent choose, they will always choose the best choice for them. Whereas if you get to choose, you can choose the worst option for them. But this is still really strong, and I'm going to agree with you here.
It has single-handedly changed how Dungeon Masters have to build encounters now when their players take this spell.
Yeah.
This spell can turn even the biggest, scariest fight against a sprawling, terrifying monster into a cakewalk, as this spell attacks not the monster's hit point pool, but something far more fragile: their action economy.
Okay, yeah. Okay, this brings up a big problem with 5e is action economy. This is the bane of DMs everywhere. Action economy is the real problem in 5e balance. And this is why a lot of people will talk about minions. I think Taking20 even talks about this a little bit, and actually is one of the few other people who has ever said something nice about 4th edition. And 4th edition had so many good things that people ignore because they didn't like it. But minions and things of that nature need to be brought back more. And action economy is so horrible in 5e when you get down to the actual skill of the game. that the side with the more pieces on the board tend to win more often than not. And this is a great equalizing spell for that.
Talked about it before. Action economy is king in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and this spell at just a meager level 2 can and will dominate fights in 5e by smothering NPCs in a crushing manner, stealing from them the one thing that they are already starved of. I mean, let's look at the incredible and dangerous CR8 Hydra, a 5th level party staring down at a 5-headed monster, something that is actually capable of killing a party member due to its number of attacks, able and willing to pile in automatic crit fails on death saves when it drops somebody, isn't worried in the least if they have this spell. Why would they be? I mean, all they have to do is cast it a few turns back to back and laugh as the barbarian and the rest of the party take turns moving up, recklessly attacking and extra attacking, and then moving back more than 10 feet. And what can you do as the Dungeon Master? You get no reactions, so you can't opportunity attack them back when they move back. You get only one action or bonus or move, so you have to move back up to the barbarian, so you might be able to attack them next turn. The wizard casts Mind Whip again, and the barbarian recklessly attacks once again, and then moves back 10 feet. A few casts of this level 2 spell, and the fight won't even be close. Tasha's Mind Whip is an absolute bomb and can and often will 100% shut down any encounter against a single deadly enemy. If you can force a dragon to choose between flying around and using its breath weapon because it can only do one, that's incredibly powerful. And any single enemy that can be kited like a stunned MMO mob will get crushed by the party easily, making this spell well deserving of the title Broken, OP, and almost too good to even be in the game.
Yeah, I'm going to give him that. It's really dumb strong in some points, especially because you can just cast it as a level 2. With automatic spell scaling, which is something they added in 5th edition, it really is silly strong for a level 2 when you get up in those levels. This just comes back to tell you, don't build your encounters over a single monster. Don't have those level 5s or level 6s go up against a single CR8 and expect it to be terrifying. Especially if you've got a party that can handle it. 5e is not built for that kind of tank and spank encounter. Don't build boring encounters, DMs. That's a boring encounter anyway. Maybe do it once if your players aren't expecting it. I did it once in my Tomb of Annihilation game, where they finally came up against the T-Rex that has kind of been moving around. But they were like level 5, and it was there. And even this would have made it less scary, but still kind of scary. But even then, I had smaller dinosaurs around running from it that were threats. So I could have added them to the party as they were running. Don't plan one big threat unless you want it to be an impactful moment. And if you know that's what your party takes, just don't do it. Having to build around your party is not that big of a deal. DMs have been doing it for years. Let's keep going.
And by the way, I have 2 wizards in my party right now that take turns casting this spell. I'm not mad at them or anything, but when I take my DM hat off and look at this with my game design hat on, I just laugh. Next up on our list, we have Dominate Person, or as I like to affectionately call it, the D&D Imperious Curse. It's always funny to me to compare different fantasy worlds and how they each perceive magic compared to Dungeons and Dragons. In the world of Harry Potter, they only have 3 unforgivable curses. The Killing Curse, pretty self-explanatory. The Cruciatus Curse, also known as the Torture Curse. And then out of all the things that people can do with magic, starting fire, throwing fireball, transmogrifying animals and presumably people into flatware, and on and on. But no, the last unforgivable go straight to jail curse in that world is a spell in which you completely control someone and their actions, aka the 5th level D&D spell, Dominate Person. Just for the record, and to get ahead of those comments who are ready to try and correct me here.
All right, hold on. I'm going to get ahead of his him correcting comments because I want to look at the spell like I always have been. All right, 5th level, 1 action, 60-foot range, verbal somatic. All right, charmed, wisdom save, enchantment, 1 minute. All right, 5th level is when you start getting like fire. 5th level spell is when you're starting to get into the post fireball flying. That's all 3rd level spells. You're about level 9, which is pretty high. 9 to 11 is when you're into like, you're the champion of the kingdom, grand wizard, maybe a king. Like, you're Merlin territory here. Like, this is your, like, you're the strongest of the strong of a kingdom. Like, there might be 1 or 2 people in a kingdom that should be this strong. That can cast 5th level spells. Like 5th to 7th level spells. There's not a lot. And you only get a couple of them. Verbal and somatic doesn't require any material. You attempt to beguile a humanoid that you can see within range. It must succeed on a wisdom throw or be charmed by you for the duration. If you or a creature that are friendly to you are fighting it, it's at advantage. All right. While the target is charmed, you have a telepathic link with it as long as the 2 of you are on the same plane of existence. You can use the link to issue commands to the creature while you're conscious. No action required. Which it does its best to obey. You can specify a simple and general course of action, such as attack that creature, run over there, fetch that object. The creature completes the order and doesn't receive further action from you. It defends and preserves itself best of its ability. You can use your action to take total control and precise control of the target. Till the end of its turn, the creature takes only the action you choose and doesn't do anything that you don't allow it to do. During this time, you can also cause the creature to use its reaction, but this requires you to use your own reaction. Each time the target takes damage, it must make a new wisdom throw against the spell. If the saving throw succeeds, the spell ends. Alright. When the creature 6 or higher, duration is concentration. Up to 10 minutes. 7th spell, hour. And then 8th or 9th, up to 8 hours. Okay. Let's give our assessment. Dominate Person's amazing. It's really strong. Yeah, you dominate, jump off the cliff. Run that way, right off a cliff. It's one of the strongest ones. Now, he was talking about Harry Potter, and he's probably going to correct about, just build your world, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, totally. Like, a lot of that comes down to world building. If you want Dominate Person spells to be illegal in your world, just do it. Like, in a world with magic, there are world building things with magic against it. Not every spell is going to be treated the same in a role play scenario. This is just the mechanics of it. And from a mechanic standpoint, this is telling you how the spell functions. Is it too strong? No, this is exactly how a Dominate Person spell should function. Again, like, some spells are too overpowered or strong because of the level they're at. Like the last one. Should that have been a 3rd level spell? Maybe. Maybe even higher. Because of the effect it has. Reverse Gravity, the first spell we looked at. Was it too powerful? No. Should it have had some more caveats in it? Yeah, it was probably lazily written because they expected people to use logic when applying it to the spell. Right? Like this one has a lot of things. Okay, here's the thing. Rules as written. During this time, you take total control. Doesn't do anything you don't allow it to do. Does it still breathe? Well, probably. Does its heart still beat? Yeah, probably. I'm going to assume, man, that it still does the things that a body still does. Right? Because those are subconscious actions. Rules as written, does it say it? No. But come on, we've got to use logic at some point and not be pedantic little dweebs about it. Sorry, I'm talking not about you, but about people when they get that, about rules as written. You got to use logic when it comes to these spells sometimes. I get so tired of people who complain about things being overpowered and then complain about rules as written, and people who interpret rules as written because they're not interpreting them correctly. It's like, people who min-max are dumb, and are breaking the game, when can't we just have fun with the spells? Well, yeah, but rules is written that says it for a reason. Like, yeah, you can use a telepathic link, no action required, and it does its best to obey. Okay, yeah, means you don't have to talk, but you have to use verbal and somatic to use it, so the person knows it's being dominated, and everyone else around knows it's being dominated. All right, we're gonna stop ranting and listen for a second.
Dominate person is not charm person or suggestion, okay? Dominate person absolutely allows you to have your target just kill themselves if you simply make them. They will only try and preserve themselves when you are not directly controlling them. So, for the 100 or so people out there who didn't realize that this does actually work differently than those other spells and are ready to tell me it doesn't work that way, now you know. Put it lightly,
yeah, you can.
This spell is busted.
Why?
The amount of things that you could have someone do with it are infinite. Some fun and horrific ideas might be to have a guard walk over and hand his sword to the prisoners while kneeling and laying perfectly still for them. Or the next time a monarch comes out to their balcony to give a speech to their subjects, they might, just throw themselves to their death.
It has a 1 minute base duration. It only lasts for a minute.
Oh yeah, it's a sorcerer spell, and it's absolutely meta magic capable like distance spell. That wasn't a very good sentence. You can use meta magics on it. That was the point. Or, speaking of meta magics, here's one even worse. The next time you see an archer and a fighter humanoid pair, like, maybe a pair of drow assassins or something, whatever, who cares, you can just twin the spell and then have the archer turn and hold out their hands for the fighter to just hack off, and on and on. And you get this spell at level 9. That's not even halfway through a full 20 level campaign. Although,
oh my gosh, did he just say that's not halfway through a full 20 level campaign? Level 9 is when you start hitting the level in which most people will never reach in a world. You are beyond the concept that most people in a world will reach. You are superheroes already. Like, yeah, you're low levels, low powered superheroes, but if we can even assume that the last 3 levels of a campaign, you're basically demigods, right? You're like 17 to 20 is a whole different ballgame when it comes to like sphere hopping and stuff like that. Then like the last tier, like 11 through 16, is like, let's go move kingdoms around. You get at the end of tier 2, which is right about the time when you should be dethroning monarchs.
Although those are rare. The damage you could inflict on literally any civilization is hard to fathom. Did I mention this spell is not a touch spell? That's the part I really can't wrap my head around. Like, do you know how scary that would be in real life? Literally anyone in a crowd that got too close could make any politician do or say anything they wanted.
So, anyone in a crowd. Do you realize how rare in most worlds 7th level casters are? When a 7th level caster shows up to a city, do you think that the spy network of the mayor doesn't know about it? This is when you're talking, again, you're not talking mechanics. Now, a little bit, you were talking about the idea of mechanics. But honestly, if you're dropping a 7th level spell, it should be massively impactful on a party. You get like 1 a day. Or 5th level spell, sorry. It should be massively impactful on any encounter you're dealing with. Like, you get a couple a day. It's, hey, I need to take that guy out of the fight now. It's a targeted spell. But, as far as impacting, like, the story, do you think he doesn't have a king doesn't wear an amulet of anti-magic in a high magic world? If you really think that, there are just 5th level spellcasters walking around, his, balcony isn't protected. I mean, our Pope drives around in a bulletproof car, our president does. Do you think they don't have the same thing? Are you not designing it where people are intelligent?
Is your target more than 60 feet away? No problem. Just mind control any guard. Seriously, just any guard. and have them walk the extra 25 feet to your target and catch them by surprise. Dead. And the last thing on this spell that I'll say is this.
So, again, we're talking about the idea that this person is mind controlled. Hi, Jerry. Jerry, what's up? He wasn't informed to answer. He wasn't informed to act like a normal person. Like, people are going to know when somebody's mind controlled. Like, we've all seen Stepford Wives, maybe. Like, you're going to know when your friend isn't acting normal. They're going to be on trained guards, at least the elite guards around a king, are going to be taught to be on the lookout for mind control, because it's a thing. Like, this is what drives me crazy sometimes, when people argue from a roleplay standpoint or a storytelling standpoint, and don't think about, wow, this magic must exist in this world. Wow, maybe these people realize that this magic exists in this world. This isn't a, 15th level caster dropped into feudal Europe where they've never seen this, like Monty Python, where it's a witch because it weighs the same as a duck. This isn't this world. They know about this thing. This is a thing that exists. Why wouldn't they?
I might, emphasis on might, be willing to use these ridiculous busted spells on my players via an NPC, like the spell Reverse Gravity, but Dominate is so busted that doing that would just fall clearly into the realm of off limits, in my opinion. I mean, can you imagine how a smart villain would use this against a party?
Oh, yeah. If my players took Dominate Person and were using it, I would use it as my party. All the time. If you use it, I use it. All the time. I may not dominate the player character, but NPCs that are walking around with them, free game.
Cast second level invisibility, sneak up to their camp while one party member is on watch, move 60 feet away, cast Dominate Person on the fighter, and have said fighter coup de grace the cleric by slicing their throat. Maybe the other party members wake up, but if not, rinse and repeat. Have the target willingly fail the save on a recast if they didn't do it fast enough. Then off themselves because, hey, they've read a few books before, and leaving survivors, particularly big, powerful, strong adventurers, is, really dumb. So just wipe the whole party. Yeah, do that to your party and see how eager they are to roll up new characters for your next campaign. If the DM using a single spell that isn't even 6th level against a group of players is enough to both end the campaign immediately and the friendship between said DM and players, the spell is probably busted. All right.
No. I mean, it's a cheesy way to end a campaign, but it's totally viable, and smart enemies will do that. It's up to you to create a villain or a reason why that doesn't happen. Did they not create watches good enough? If they know they're a villain, if the villain knows where they are, I mean, that's just dumb. I mean, do you have a reoccurring villain that keeps popping up going, ha 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 ha, I am a villain like Rita Repulsa? Well, then you're a bad DM. Come on, man. No good DM is going to have a villain keep popping up doing that. Like, that's not how the world works. Like, why is the villain popping up and keep doing that? Why does the villain know where the party is? Are they not hiding? If they're high enough level that they're threatening a villain that can cast 5th level spells and scrying for them to figure out where they are, do they not have some sort of defense against that? If that's the kind of campaign you're running? And if they didn't have a defense against that and something to reveal, invisible enemies out to whatever, the party was asking for it. They knew what kind of campaign they were getting into. Unless they thought they were in one of those squishy roleplay campaigns that they were never going to die in.
The 4th spell on our list of broken spells it's Healing Word. I've talked about Healing Word controversially in the past.
No, it's not. It's an important part of the way 5th edition is balanced, because healing in 5th edition is dumb, and they heal in so way. It's an important part of getting people up and maintaining the action economy.
And years later, not a thing has changed. Healing Word is still unbelievably broken due to how the death and dying mechanics in D&D 5e are written. Simply put, by giving players a hard cap of 0 when they take huge amounts of damage and...
Okay, yeah, he's going to talk about this. So you go to 0 when you fall unconscious. Any healing wakes you up. Therefore, a bonus action first level spell will wake up somebody who's dying. Okay, this is true. However, one hit to an unconscious person from a melee attack does 2 death saving throws. Instantly. Failed death saving throws. Because a hit to an unconscious person is automatically a crit, and a crit is 2 death saving throws. Failed. So, it's incredibly easy to kill people who are dying in 5e, if that's what you're doing. So, if I need to look at it to you, it's a first level bonus action with 60 feet verbal range, instant, and it heals 1d4 plus your spellcasting mod, usually wisdom. And when you go higher, it increases by 1d4 per each level above first. No one really casts a spell higher. It's bad healing economy. This is the action economy cheap healing spell for a first level spell to get people up. It's the D&D equivalent of spending a spell slot and a bonus action to stabilize and get somebody awake. Basically, a healer's kit should have been using healer's kit to spend an action to heal 1 hit point. Whereas Healing Word is use a bonus action in a spell slot. Instead, healer's kit only stabilizes. Whereas you should be able to stabilize with a medicine check, and a healer's kit should be able to stabilize for free, or a medicine check and a healer's kit to give 1 hit point back. If they're at 0. If they're not at 0, it shouldn't be able to heal them. Or maybe you can. A good example of this, and it uses a charge. Pathfinder 2nd does a way better job of this. And it uses a charge whether you heal or not. Pathfinder 2nd does a much better job of healing, and because of every time you get downed, it keeps the fails, and it gives you a fail state. They do a much better job of balancing down. And it prevents you from wanting to go down in the first place. But here's the thing about downed players. They still lose half their movement. They probably still lose action economy. It's still not a great strategy, but it's better than a lot. And frankly, that's just the way 5e works. In 5e, you need Healing Word. It's just kind of, you have to.
Allowing players, or NPCs for that matter, to be completely effective at 1 hit point makes the range and flexibility of Healing Word simply so much better than literally any other type of low-level healing, and honestly, oftentimes better than even high-level healing. Yeah, and I want to say, I did see a lot of people arguing that, well, Healing Word didn't do enough healing, and that players would just drop right over again. Right, but...
Add.
Who cares? There's no penalty to future death saves if the player is back on the ground and bleeding out. All they need is that single point of healing, and they can stand up and attack again. Additionally, that particular point of contention doesn't take into account the alternative choices for healing with a level 1 spell slot compared to Healing Word. Is Cure Wounds really going to prevent that player from dropping again where Healing Word would fail? No. But now the cleric can still cast Sacred Flame, the druid can still cast Firebolt, and the bard can still inspire someone, shoot 2 arrows, or viciously mock to give disadvantage to that opponent. Oh, and one thing that really made me laugh the last time we talked about Healing Word was the sheer volume of people that said, oh, well, just attack the downed players before they save, Cody. Which to say is oversimplifying the solution to counter this spell's raw strength would be an understatement. There's no context of how hurt the NPCs or NPC might be by the time that they actually get to drop a barbarian, how many attacks they have left, the fact that they most likely used at least one of their attacks to drop the PC in the first place, or the fact that the party with Healing Word could definitely go between the NPC and the down player's death saves. Not to mention, if the party had more than one member with Healing Word, how high the odds then become that they could get off a bonus action heal from a safe distance while still attacking the probably quite injured monster or NPC. The bottom line is, the Healing Word is so incredibly efficient for preventing player death that a party with 3 members capable of casting it will always outlive their counterparts that do not. Now, if you're running...
Yeah, that's true. It's called building well. I mean, I don't know why you have a problem with people building well. And also, I'm just going to bring up the point that if a barbarian drops unconscious like that, they lose their rage, which is what you were probably talking about. About how hard it is to drop a barbarian. Yeah, their rage goes away when they drop, I believe when they drop unconscious. We can double check that because I like to double check things. Because I believe in looking things up while I'm talking. Go to roll20.net, double check it. Yeah, rage. Knocked unconscious if your turn ends and you haven't attacked. I believe even when you have... that's if you can keep fighting. Persistent rage. Yep, even with persistent rage, even only if you fall unconscious or you choose. So yeah, if you fall unconscious, you lose your rage. Like, that's a thing. And now it's not that hard to end you. And here's the thing, if you've got a party that's using that, make them fight in damage zones. Like things that tick at the beginning of your turn. Like when you enter a turn or enter for the first time or begin your turn there. There's nothing to say you can't do that. Like, not end your turn there, but begin your turn there. So you enter for the first time or begin your turn in a zone, you take damage. Like dangerous fogs, or have enemies throw things like, damage zones at them, or persistent damage, light people on fire, things like that, like it's going to cause that tick damage at the beginning of their turns. Because I believe fire is at the beginning of your turn. That's the wrong one. Fire damage. That's all damage. 5e being light on fire. Being lit. That'd be the way to spell it. So that's like end its turn there. So being on fire, what's it do? Yeah, 5. So it takes 1d10 damage at the start of its turn. Generally. So, like, that's a great way. Just have things on fire and have them take 1d10 fire damage at the start of their turn. Like, even at high levels, that's a potential to just kill someone and knock them out after the healing word.
Running any form of home rules with exhaustion levels when you drop, or death saves that linger, or whatever, okay, fine.
And that's not even a home rule. That's just fire rules. Look, you're standing in fire. Take 1d10 fire damage at the beginning of your turn. Oh man, I was just picked up for 5 health. Well, take 6 fire damage. You're dropped now. You don't get your turn.
Suddenly now, Healing Word becomes much, much worse. But if you're playing rules as written, Healing Word is simply a bomb, and by the time you reach 5th level, the cost of a level 1 spell slot to immediately save a party member's life towards the end of a combat is already beginning to feel a little free. And by level 10, you're not really doing anything with those level 1 spell slots anyway, so it really begins to feel easy to, level 1 spell slot. That's nothing. Healing Word in a rules as written game is easily one of the most broken spells in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. 7 years later, nothing's changed. And
Yeah, I mean, it is a strong spell. You know, but so is Goodberry. I mean, Goodberry at level 1. I mean, ask anyone who's ever played with me in a one-shot how useful my hippie life cleric rules as written 4 health Goodberries are at level 1. Like, giving that its rules as written completely. Like, Goodberry 4 health, 40 health from a level 1 spell is rules as written. Like, right there. Like, there's really strong stuff that happens. And Healing Word is still really good. And there's nothing wrong with having good things and having bad things that are useful at times. Healing Word is just kind of a necessary thing that kind of makes level 1 spell slots still useful.
finally, the last spell on our list of the best Dungeons and Dragons spells that are broken, busted, and overpowered is Slow, as we come full circle with more focus on action economy. There are a lot of incredible spells that you might argue deserve this last spot in the top 5, like Counterspell, Wish, Banishment, Teleport, Mental Prison, or...
If you're actually counting Wish, which is a level 9 spell, as overpowered, then I'm not taking you seriously because it's a level 9 spell.
Even Levitate. Yes, Levitate when used offensively is busted for sure, but Slow is just too good. Once it comes online as an option to take...
Oh, we've got another ad, guys.
3 spell. This spell would...
All right, let's look at Slow. 3rd level, which does mean it's competing with things like Fireball, Fly, Invisibility. Like, these are some really powerful spells. Action 1, range 120 feet. That's really good. Verbal, somatic, and material. That's harsh. 1 minute transmutation, wisdom save, control. Okay, you alter time around up to 6 creatures. That's huge. In a 40-foot cube within range. Each target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. Okay, so you're probably hitting 3 to 4 on average, unless you're specifically hitting weak whizzed. An affected target's speed is halved. Okay, pretty good. Takes a -2 penalty to AC and Dex saving throws, and it can't use reactions. On its turn, it can either use an action or bonus action, not both. Okay, regardless of the creature's ability to magic items, it can't make more than 1 melee attack or ranged attack during its turn. That's really good. The creature attempts to cast a spell with a casting time of 1 action. Roll a d20 on an 11 or higher. Spell doesn't take effect in the creature's next turn, and the creature must use its action on that turn to complete the spell. If it can't, the spell is wasted. Creature affected by the spell makes another saving throw at the end of each of its turns. On a successful save, the effect ends for it. Okay, this is a really good spell. Yeah, this is strong. This is a really strong crowd control spell. I think you don't like crowd control spells for some reason. Like I'm gonna say this, crowd control are amazingly powerful. But here's the thing. And I'm gonna say this. Crowd control, I mean, even if you just hit 1 creature, this is really strong. Again, if you got one, your enemy, your DM is giving you 1 big creature and you slow them, this is really good. Now, I would rather Tasha's Mind Whip them. That's probably stronger, I would say, unless you're having trouble hitting it. Unless they're like a caster, then the spell effect could be really powerful, preventing them from casting. But if you've got actually needing to hit 6 creatures with this, then you're getting mobbed. At 3rd level, I'd probably just throw fireballs. You probably have a chance of killing a few of them, and then you're just stripping their action economy anyway. But again, you can drop this on your party safely, so that's a toss-up. This is Order Domain, Circle of the Land Arctic, Wizard. Can't see what other classes get it, but
would still be considered good, great, even excellent as a level 6 or level 7 spell. But at just level 3, it easily slides into one of the most broken and overpowered spells in the game. Its one and only drawback is something that you can still easily work around, and that's that slow has an area effect of a 40-foot cube. Even that's quite large, but it's not just an AoE effect, it's an AoE effect that lets you hand pick your targets, and it gets better. It doesn't even let you exclude up to 3 or 4 creatures. It just straight up lets you include up to 6 creatures in the cube when you cast this spell. And for those targets, what does it do? Well, it halves their speed, gives them a -2 to AC, which if you flipped it would almost be like a bless to every member in your party, not just 3. It penalizes their dex saves like a Bane spell would, and eliminates their reactions immediately like a shocking grasp effect that lasts 1 minute potentially. It steals an action or a bonus action every turn, and regardless of how many attacks the target normally takes now, they only get 1. So even the mighty Hydra that we talked about earlier would go from 5, 6, or 7 attacks down to just 1. Oh, and if the target tries to cast a spell or something, there is a 50-50 chance that the spell now takes 2 turns to cast, and if the target can't cast a spell on both turns, it fails. I mean, wow. I get that there is a save every turn. I understand that. But even so, this spell, particularly because of its AoE size and the ability to cast it in the middle of your party's fighter, rogue, barbarian, or paladin, and not worry about them getting hit in the AoE, is candidly busted. Action economy is king in 5e, and if you start taking away 3 to 5 attacks off...
I mean, it's not busted. It's strong. It's going to swing a battle. But that's what magic does. I don't know what you want from big, impactful spells. It's a concentration spell, I think. I gotta relook it up. Was it concentration? Yeah, it's a concentration up to 1 minute. So in a big group, it's a concentration that also they get saves every turn. If you're not, when they drop this, suddenly going, kill the wizard. I mean, it's a wizard sorcerer spell. Kill the wizard. Everyone focus him because he just slowed the party. Then I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what to tell you.
The board per round while simultaneously lowering your opponent's AC, making them easier fodder for your fellow party members, is going to win fights that might otherwise be deadly encounters for your party. Slow just wins combat.
But it's not a problem to win combats. If you know your opponent has a slow spell, they want to use it, set up combat so that they can use it. Are you trying to kill your party? I mean, isn't the game so that they can play? I'm just confused here.
You see how cheap and efficient it is to cast. Its value never wanes as the campaign progresses into the upper echelon of levels. In fact, it does the opposite. Because monsters with multi-attack with 3 or even 4 attacks are more and more prevalent in higher level CR monsters, the spell actually becomes more efficient as the campaign continues. There isn't even a way to upcast it because there's no need to. You just get the full 6 creatures right away with this level 3 spell. There is no doubt that slow is absolutely deserving of being included as one of the most overpowered spells in all of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to you guys.
So yeah, it's a strong spell. It's a good spell. You got to use it right. And, if they save, nothing happens. So it's not very splashy. I mean, it has a chance of all 6 of them saving. And then nothing happened. And you wasted a turn. That's the problem with save spells. And they could save at the end of their first turn, and then you've got 1 turn of that crowd control. Or, you could save 2 of the, if you're fighting 6, you're probably fighting more than 6. at that point. You know, you might be fighting 8. Their 2 friends are gonna, double attack you, and now you've got to make 4, concentration checks to try to not lose it, and now they all go. Use strategy. Like, your enemy, the monsters should be using strategy if they're smart. You know, even kobolds can understand spellcaster bad. Goblins are great at that. Make it challenging for your players. Don't make your mobs dumb. Don't have them swarm the fighter and barbarian. Make your players earn their victories, even with these strong spells. And if your players are dropping these strong spells, give your if you're only using monsters, yeah, I can see why. But if you've got enemy spellcasters, have them drop slow in the party if the parties drop slow. If your big bad is like, hey, they're bringing out spellcasters, here, have a couple of fighters and rogues and archers, and maybe they've got a spellcaster and a cleric who is picking up their unconscious people with a mass healing word, and suddenly they dropped a big slow on the party. See how they like it.
In the community, what did I miss here? What got left off this list that deserved to be included in these top 5? I'll tell you, I personally narrowed the list down to 13 and then cut that 13 down to 5. And there was some really good stuff that got left off. Counterspell, Wish, I mentioned those earlier. Haste isn't on this list.
I mean, haste is good. Counterspell is really strong, but it's meant for counterplay. And if your players are using it, you can use it. I've always been a big believer of that. Counterspell exists, magic exists. Do you think wizards and bad guys don't have counterspell ready when they're coming against a party with the known spellcaster? Make your players be smart. Dumb players are bred because of DMs who expect them to be dumb or treat them like they're dumb.
And there were a few more that I think were kind of really good, even excellent, but nothing that I thought, oh man, that's so much better than everything else. So I'm curious to see what you guys think I missed here. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the incredible patrons over at...
All right, so we're just going to wrap that up here. We've been recording for a while, but it's good to get going. I got a new webcam up, which is why I can actually record again. And I really like doing these reaction videos and talking about how people see these, because these aren't broken spells. I mean, yeah, I think Reverse Gravity could have had a little bit more of the text put into the spell to explain it, because I feel that it's not meant, that it actually wants you to treat it like gravity, as if there's a bottom that's kind of like floaty, where you just kind of hover there. If you can't take another action, if you can't do something, like if you can obviously fly, like you're meant to fly, just like you kind of are floating on like a gelatin bottom. That seems to be obvious. Same way, like if somebody tosses you a rope, you can grab the rope and be pulled out of it. But like, yeah, I'm going to agree with number 2, the Tasha's Mind Whip, that probably a little overpowered, probably pushing it. It's from one of the newer books. They seem to be power creeping just a little. Some of it seems intentional with like the new Ranger stuff, which is their version of patching the Ranger. Some of it seems less intentional with like the Barbarian, which isn't totally power creep, but a little bit, and with some of the new spells. But I think that's kind of, people don't want to necessarily, a lot of people aren't wanting to support Wizards in Hasbro, and they need reason to buy the books, and it's, hey, we're introducing more powerful stuff, buy it or don't get access to it. I'll can go into detail about the new Strixhaven book that looks horrible, and people might only buy it for a couple of spells out of it if they're strong enough, or their race. But anyway, I've been Zarku Games, and this was my response to the most broken spells in Dungeons & Dragons 5e by Taking20. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.